So hello everyone and welcome to today's IAPC&M CPD Building Masterclass. My name is Julie Kennedy and I am your host. So today we welcome management consultant author John Parr, who has developed a unique model, the emotional assertiveness model. And a less known fact, which I always find really funny because you can read all his details in his bio, is that John once joined a performer in a blues club in Chicago on stage to sing a few songs. So who knows, we might be greeted with one of those today. So welcome, John. But first, some housekeeping. Our call today will be a maximum of 1 hour, including 15 minutes Q&A, but you can ask the questions as you go along. That's what John would like. The session is recorded, so please mute yourself, but keep your video on so the speaker can see they're not talking to themselves. And our topic today is emotions communicating empathy and compassion. I think the world can do with a lot more of that. So grab your pen and your CPD pads and over to you, John.
Thank you. I'm going to share screen because I've got a whole bunch of slides that I'm going to run through. I need them because they structure me a bit, especially in a 1 hour slot. So, oh, that's my two grandchildren, or two of my grandchildren. Where are the slides? There they are. Okay, folks. It's my preference when I'm working for you to ask questions on the hoof. I've got a lot to share with you. I've done my best to use Occam's razor and make it as cut down to the bare necessities as possible, but we'll rock and roll and see how it goes. But one quick thing I do ask you is, please, unless you're in a very noisy environment, please leave your mics on so that if you want to ask me a question or if I ask you a question, I can hear you when you respond. My eyesight is not good, and I don't respond well to these little wavy things on the screen. So if you have a question, just shout out, "I have a question," and I will do my best to answer it.
And I'll keep an eye on it for you, John, as well. Don't worry.
Yeah, thank you. If you'd also, Julie, keep an eye on chat. If people send me messages, yes. I'm unlikely to see that.
Right.
If there's a message that I need to see, please let me know about it.
I will, John. I will.
So we're going to talk about some material that I developed yonks ago when I was a psychotherapist, going back to the early 90s, in fact. I was working with a range of different kinds of clients, and I realized that I had two basic clusters. One group of people were people that when they were having some form of an issue, they climbed into their head and pressed their emotions out of the way as much as possible. And another group of people who got over emotional and swamped by their emotions and couldn't think clearly. And so I started to develop some tools to help people do what I call joined up writing, so that they could do their thinking and their emotions together and use their emotions as information as they look to problem solve. And then I started to read Daniel Goleman and all the things that were on the market back then in the early 90s. And he was saying things like how important it was to be emotionally intelligent, but nowhere did it really mention how to be. And I thought, well, that's interesting because I know how to be. I've just been developing all that stuff. So I sat down and started to write a master's degree on emotional assertiveness on my material. And that is now the basis of a model that I do in industry. I do with various people, including teaching school kids and teachers how to use their emotions effectively. So that's a little bit of background. So why emotions in coaching? Emotions are essential in communication. Basically, it's not just in coaching. Emotions need to be everywhere. The coach has to achieve a trust-based relationship with their client. And that is in order to establish a connection, to demonstrate empathy and compassion, and to facilitate collaboration. Coaching is a collaborative journey that we take together. So this requires understanding and sharing emotions. In human relationships, it's based on the fact that we are a herd animal. Our ancestors, for way back, centuries, millennia, lived together in groups. Therefore, attachment is a basic need. To function in a group, we have to make bonds and attachments. And when we do that, that's when we cooperate with one another. It's also when we go out to hunt together. If there's a predator about to attack me, my buddies will help to protect me. I will help to protect them. We work together, we cooperate. We're not the strongest, the fastest, or the most powerful creature out there, but through healthy cooperation and the use of our brain, we learned how to work together to get to the top of the food chain, really. So attachment is achieved and maintained by showing empathy, compassion, and respect. These are the key bits of being connected with one another. We have to be empathic. We have to be compassionate towards one another. And above all, we have to operate from a place of respect. In TA, this is the IMO-KK position. It's about being together respectfully as human beings. And emotional assertiveness offers the tools for this. The material that I've developed actually offers us the tools to be compassionate, to show empathy, and to be respectful in the way that we communicate. So emotions in communication, we know from some research that goes back to the early or mid-70s, Ban and Ferris, that less than 10% of face-to-face verbal communication is actually the words. The words suggest the content. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not important, because it's the content that we want to get across. But the difficulty is that we don't just use the words. The most significant components of communication, 90%, are tone of voice, facial expression, gestures, posture. This is how we communicate with our emotions. All of our emotional content, or most of our emotional content, is coded in these these components. So the 4 components carry the emotional content, as I've just said. Many coach training programs focus a lot on questions and answers, on using techniques to facilitate people using logic and thinking. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that actually works very well. It works particularly well for people like me who love logic. But when we apply emotional intelligence to our work, we're more quickly able to deal with the blocks that we encounter in coaching when we are with a client who gets stuck, or when we feel stuck. When going on, it's often at that emotional level that this is happening. So with emotional assertiveness, we're actually seeking to resolve the blocks. We're solving blocks that come from our emotional dissonance when we are internally conflicted, and that's often an emotional issue. So before the hominids developed language, communication was primarily achieved through expression of emotion. If you look at the great apes and the monkeys and the chimpanzees, they don't have words, but they sure communicate, and they do it through facial expressions, gestures, postures, the noises that they make and the tones that they make. This is all the emotional communication that goes on between them, and it's very effective. When we were babies, everybody in this room once didn't have a language. And how did we communicate with our parents? It was all done through emotions. Healthy parenting is primarily about being able to read the emotions that your child is showing you and knowing how to regulate your emotions and help to teach them to regulate their emotions, and how to understand what the emotional communication is telling you, how to differentiate between one cry and another cry, how to recognize that when the baby is playful and giggling, that's what it wants. It wants to be played with. It wants to have that kind of human contact. So awareness of this emotional component was vital for us when we were babies. When we grow up and we get words, we may begin to think that it's all very fancy to talk now. We don't need our emotions, but actually they work together. They still remain, and they're still just as important as they were when we were babies. The only thing that we can do now that we're grown up that we couldn't do when we were babies is we can put into words the meaning, the intent, the questions, whatever it is. These can be now spoken, but we still work together best when this is consistent with the way that we are saying what we're saying. With our emotions and our thinking together, then we're much more effective. So emotions are triggered by the fight-flight mechanism. We're not going to take a long time over this, but it's worth understanding the basic mechanisms of emotions. So whenever we get an input into our primitive brain, it triggers responses that go out to various parts of the brain to be sampled. And the first thing that happens is we get a release of adrenaline, because any input to our primitive system could be either a threat or an opportunity. The primitive brain is basically on the level of, is this something that I get to eat, or is it something that gets to eat me? So we get a shot of adrenaline, which raises our level of awareness. The limbic system becomes aroused. And as a result of that, we can then refine why am I experiencing this arousal? There was a noise. That noise could have been danger, but it was just my friend sneezing. It wasn't danger, nothing to worry about. Or, oh, it was a lion, something dangerous. I need to do something about it. So that happens in a different part of the brain. And the emotions then of anger, sadness, and fear flow from this trigger mechanism that we're experiencing. Is this making sense so far? Is there anybody out there? So
yes,
if
sorry,
I
we
ask
did
a
all
question,
mute. Yes,
yay! That's why I asked you to turn your mics on. When we account for our emotions and those of others, we're more effective in communicating. We forge better human contacts, and we achieve bonding and attachment. And you may think that bonding and attachment is just something that goes on within families, between parents and children, or between partners who live together. No, human beings make bonds and attachments all over the place with almost anybody that they come into contact with, if they're effective at using all of their facilities. That's how we cooperate. So we make bonds in all kinds of ways, and we're just not aware of it. Obviously, some of those bonds are not strong, heavy connections, but there's huge sense of attachment when we come together. And when we make attachments, that's when we start having respect. We see each other as human beings, and human beings don't kill human beings. Human beings first have to dehumanize the other person before they harm or kill. So the whole process of showing a lack of respect is a step towards dehumanization and drawing us into conflict, which is aggressive and unhelpful. It's all about respect and being together and saying, hey, we're not going to hurt one another, are we? Is this making sense? I'm aware I'm going very quickly. I'm aware. Sorry, say again.
Makes sense.
Good, thank you. I'm aware I'm going quickly. So if you need me to slow down, please say so, and I'll do my best to pitch it at a rate that we can get through the material and make sense of it and make it something that's useful rather than just a little bit of information. So key skills, empathy and compassion. Empathy. We demonstrate empathy when we're able to effectively put ourselves in the other person's shoes, to experience what they're experiencing. Now, we can't ever know what they're experiencing, but we can know how we would feel, how we would respond and experience what they're experiencing, so we can empathize with them. And when we're able to empathize, that leads us to being able to show compassion. We demonstrate our understanding through compassion. So compassion, we demonstrate compassion when we show that we have heard them and we respond in a human way or a humane way. It's about being available as a human being, a companion on the journey. So compassion is actually very different from empathy, but they're hand in hand. Compassion is what we show when we are empathic. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Sure.
So at the bottom you see a website. That's where you'll find out a bit about this material. That's my website for emotional assertiveness. So during the 90s, I've told you this, the stuff was written by Goleman and Co. And they were telling us, you know, that it was really important, but didn't tell us how. And I developed the model as a result of the work I'd been doing. And my hypothesis started from the basis that we're all born with the capacity to express emotion authentically. Now, that is an important word, because emotions can be expressed authentically and non-authentically. And we're talking, when it's healthy, it's the authentic expression of an emotion. I am me, and I am showing you who I am. That means I'm willing to be a bit vulnerable with you. And that's why sometimes we avoid expressing our emotions, because we don't like to feel vulnerable. So it was the school of life that taught us how not to be authentic, how not to show our emotions in a healthy way. And unfortunately, for most of us, our parents, God bless them, showed us because they didn't know how to do it. So they didn't know how to do it because their parents didn't know how to do it. And their parents didn't know how to do it because their parents didn't know how to do it. So we keep on passing down through each generation the faults that some of our parents and their ancestors had. And the thing is, of course, each family has their own collection of myths and fantasies about this stuff. There's a lovely poem by a man called Philip Larkin. Philip Larkin said, "They fuck you up, your mum and dad. They may not mean to, but they do. They give you all the faults they had, then add some extra just for you. But they were fucked up in their turn by fools in old style hats and coats, who half the time were soppy stern, half at one another's throats. Man's on misery to man. It deepens like a coastal shelf. Get out as quickly as you can and don't have any kids yourself." That's Philip Larkin. Philip Larkin was a tutor for one of my therapy clients from years ago, and my client told me he was one of the most miserable men he ever met. And Philip Larkin followed his belief system. He died age 63 with no children. So the pity for me in that is his first two verses shows that he understands it, and his third verse suggests that he believes that you're bound by it. Well, you're not. You can change things. So sadly, Larkin didn't. So because we actually learned all this rubbish, we can actually unlearn it and recover our natural abilities. And that's what my model is aimed at helping people to do, to get back in touch with being ourselves and experiencing our authentic emotions, using them to understand what it is that's gone wrong and what I need to do to put it right, and what I need from other people to put it right. So I communicate authentically. So that's where all of the material comes from. Hello, why doesn't that want to work now? So my first hypothesis was that just as a lack of pain is an indicator of physical health, happiness is our core emotion, and it signifies emotional well-being, psychological well-being. I believe that we're programmed to be happy. Now, by happy, I don't mean running around skipping and kicking up the leaves and giggling. I mean calm, content, satisfied, just relaxed. That for me is a low-level form of happiness. So right now I'm feeling fairly calm. I'm feeling relaxed and I'm happy. When I first started a few minutes ago, I was aware of the time pressure, and I was under a little bit of pressure. I'd put myself under pressure. And at that point, I wasn't relaxed. I wasn't allowing myself to just go with the flow. Okay, so we can do things about it. We can breathe. We can do things to change our behaviors, but we can use our emotions to help us get back to that state where we're calm and relaxed. Of course, happiness goes from calm and relaxed up to elation. It's a big emotion, but primarily we're designed to be calm. Just like when I'm physically well, my body doesn't feel anything very much. When I'm emotionally well, I don't feel anything very much. But that for me is happy. Okay, does this make sense?
Yes.
So we learned to cover up emotions. Going back to what I was saying earlier about what we learned from our parents, we learned to cover up some of our authentic emotions and display defense mechanisms instead, which are usually a collection of ordinary emotions, but expressed non-authentically. So I'm not expressing the emotion that's appropriate. I'm not expressing the right amount of emotion, or I'm not expressing an emotion at all when I've got one. We're talking about the need to be authentic. So because of our learning behaviors, we learn when we're in trouble, particularly when it's an emotional issue or something that we're uncomfortable about, we move away from our healthy, authentic emotions, and we start to display other emotions which are less healthy. So when we utilize these cover-up motions unconsciously, we're no longer focused on solving the problem that we've got here and now. We really start to repeat patterns of behavior that have never worked for us and never will work, but somehow or other, it's what we do because that's what we always do. Just making sense? You've seen this, I'm sure, as coaches, lots of times in other people, and probably recognize it in yourself also sometimes. Why am I doing this to myself? So some of the markers of cover-up emotions, they don't match the circumstances. Something has just gone on in the environment that we would expect someone to be angry about, and they're not angry. They're crying, or they're sad. That's not the appropriate emotion for the event. So it doesn't match somehow or other. Sometimes they're more intense or less intense than you would expect. So something minor happens in your life, and suddenly you're actually furious about it. What? All I said was I don't like cheese. Okay, so it's like somehow or other the emotion that's being expressed is either too big or too small for the situation that is going on. They often last much longer than you would expect them to. A normal, healthy emotion normally lasts for about 4-5 seconds. They're quite short, actually. We can obviously keep repeating them, but an emotion is relatively short-lived. But when we've learned how not to deal with them authentically, we manage to pull forward from the future emotions that aren't appropriate yet because the situation hasn't happened, or we drag from the past things that have happened and we're still feeling annoyed about or sad about or scared about, and we're not dealing with that in the right time frame. We're going to see later on in my model, we use the time frame as a means of identifying the authenticity of the emotion and what I need to do to help me use that emotion effectively. And the big bottom liner is they do not help solve the problem. When we're expressing these emotions that aren't appropriate, they don't lead to a healthy solution of problems. Instead of negotiating, we manipulate one way or another. And when we're showing these non-authentic emotions, these cover-up emotions, it will involve some form of blaming, attacking, or victim-y behavior. So if you know about the drama triangle, Steve Karpman's drama triangle, you will understand what I'm talking about: the rescuer, the victim, and the persecutor. I'm not going to ask you, do you know? But some of you probably do, because you've had coach training, and Karpman's triangle is pretty much taught all over the place these days. So we also have what I call a familiar bad feeling, an FBF. It's like when we've got a moment or two spare and nothing much happening in our lives, we can sometimes experience our familiar bad feeling. It might be the blues, or it might be anger, or whatever. We can look for familiar bad feelings. Beginning to tag your familiar bad feeling is a great way of helping yourself to move away from it and get back to authenticity. FBFs are usually cover-up emotions. They're not healthy emotions. So when we observe another person showing an emotion, it's our faces that give away most of the information. We have 41 facial muscles, and they work together in order to show the main emotions. So happy, sad, scared, and angry. The other emotions that we'll talk about are combinations of those. So these facial muscles are wired up so that when we experience an emotion, our face shows the emotion on our face. And when we get good at reading the facial expressions, then that's when we start to be able to use emotional intelligence more appropriately. You see me, I see you. So we read it and we understand it. If we paralyze the muscles, for example, Botox does that, not only do we not mirror the other person, so mirroring is what happens when I see you looking sad and I show that I'm sad that you're sad. We have neurons in the brain that are called mirror neurons, and it helps us to make those bonds of attachment. So when I inject myself with Botox, which gladly I don't, what I do is I paralyze the muscles. And if I paralyze the muscles, guess what? My face does not show the emotion properly. And guess what? Not only does it work that way around, it works the other way around as well. If my facial muscles don't move, then I don't experience the emotion. These muscles work in two ways. if I feel sad and I smile, I can quickly begin to start feeling better. The act of smiling, putting that proper smile on the face, can change the way I feel. When I feel sad, that will encourage my face to put on a sad face. You will see it. We see one another. So when our facial muscles show an emotion, we also experience and feel the emotion. It's a two-way system. So in my model, I say that there are actually only four basic emotions or core emotions. All other emotions are constructed from those four. So it's just like a color pad. You know, I've got three colors, primary colors, and from those three primary colors, I can construct millions of different colors and shades and tones. And exactly the same is going on with emotion. But when I'm showing you mixed emotions, a blend of emotions, and you read it as, oh, he's jealous, or he's shy, whatever you read from those mixed emotions, you are left to guess what I am in terms of sad, scared, or angry. And that's not healthy. So what I need to do to be emotionally intelligent is to let myself understand where these emotions, these compound emotions, are coming from. What is the bedrock? I'm sad about this, I'm scared about this, I'm angry about this. And then I can peg, what do I need to do about those emotions? How do I help myself to recover from this collection of emotion? Is this making sense? Because I'm aware that I'm shooting through it rapidly. You all on board?
So good. Yeah.
Perfect sense. Yeah, really good.
Thank you.
Very clear.
So happiness, anger, sadness, and fear. All other emotions are combinations. Some descriptions of emotions are not even emotions at all, but they're rather emotional states, i.e. a mixture of emotions and reasoning. For example, jealousy is not a simple emotion. It's a mixture of anger, sadness, and fear. Guilt is not an emotion at all. Guilt is a belief. I have done something wrong. When we believe we've done something wrong, we experience an emotion and we call that guilt. But actually, guilt in itself is just a recognition, I've done something wrong, I need to do something to put it right. Shame. Shame is not an emotion. Shame is a belief. There is something wrong with me. When there's something wrong with me, I want to hide. I don't want anyone to see what's wrong with me. So I cover it up in some way. Okay, so becoming more and more aware of what is going on when we use words like, I feel guilty, and what does that mean, and how do we do something about it, is really helpful in solving problems. So I've already told you this. I see the emotions like a color palette that you can mix everything from. So we need to get back to the basics to solve problems. So 4 primary emotions, here we are. I've mentioned them already. And these are the ones that we focus on in the model and understand how to get a handle on them and use them to direct us into action to solve problems. Really important to know that there's no such thing as a negative emotion. Emotions are emotions. They're not negative or positive. Anger is just anger. It's not a negative emotion. If I use my anger authentically and effectively, it's highly positive. Anger is there to drive me towards you to problem solve in our relationship. It's not to drive me towards you to threaten you or aggress you. It's to give me the energy to stay with it and work it out with you. That's why I have anger. So it doesn't require me to shout, raise my voice, shake my fist, scowl at you. I may show you some of the facial expressions of anger, And I should be telling you in a way that you can hear me. I should be saying, when you did that, I felt angry because, and this is what I need from you. Are you willing to negotiate with me about this? Non-threatening, non-blaming, non-attacking, not you made me angry. When you did that, I felt angry. Okay, I'm responsible for feeling angry. You're not responsible for me feeling angry. You're responsible for what you did, not for my feelings. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So there are no negative emotions. Emotions can be expressed in unhealthy ways or in healthy ways. Emotions expressed authentically are beneficial. They help us. So we talk about anger because it's one of the ones that gets most bad press. There are actually 4 kinds of anger. I came upon this as a concept way back again in the 90s. Authentic, healthy anger. I can be angry authentically in a healthy way, and it helps me in my relationships to solve problems. I can become attacking. That's explosive. It's dangerous. It's negative. It is not healthy. I can internalize it. So I can be angry and I don't express it and I deal with it internally, and that becomes implosive. So attacking becomes explosive, or has a risk of becoming explosive. Internalized it implodes, it harms myself, or I harm myself. Vengeful, vindictive, and blaming, these are often indirect. They're there, but passively aggressively expressed. So a summary of anger. Authentic anger is a force to drive us towards another person to solve a problem, not to win. It's to find a win-win. It's constructive. It is not destructive. We're looking to build. There's a lovely line in the Bible. I think it was Paul that wrote it. If your brother offends you, go to your brother before the sun goes down, and in this way you will win a brother. Now, I think Paul probably also meant sister. I don't think he was just talking about men. The idea basically is that when we have a problem, don't let the sun go down on it. Let's sit down, let's discuss it, let's work it through, and let's end up where we're even more attached, where we have more trust. Unless we manage anger in an authentic, healthy way, we cannot be happy. So interestingly, people who try not to be angry in order to not have arguments often end up not being so happy as they could be if they allowed themselves to have a discussion that isn't an argument. It's a discussion, it's a sharing, it's a hearing one another. I mentioned earlier emotions and time. So present, past, and future. Here is my model. I want to go through it rapidly with you to give us time to do other things together. So where are we on time? We've got about 20 minutes left, am I right?
Right.
So I saw emotions as being a bit like our central nervous system. We have nerves on our skin and all over our body that picks up when there's something wrong. If at the moment, for example, I have carpal tunnel and I can't use my right hand properly. And sometimes it gets a bit painful. What is that telling me? That pain is telling me, stop doing what you're doing for the moment and give your body a chance to recover. If I break my arm, I have to immobilize it to stop it from hurting. The pain is healthy. It's telling me you really need to do something to protect yourself, to look after your body so it can heal. The body is designed to self-heal. It's an amazing piece of kit. It can recover from all kinds of things. So when I looked at that, I thought, well, emotionally, we're designed to self-heal. We're actually designed to be happy. And if we're designed to be happy, the other emotions, which clearly aren't happy, have got a function. And what is their function? It's to tell me something is wrong, this is what's wrong, and this is what you need to do to get back to being happy. This makes sense?
Yeah.
So where do these emotions fit in time? Well, happiness is it spans time. I can think about things in the past, be very happy about it when I think about them. I can be in the present and I can be happy. I can think about things we're going to do. Like, for example, on Thursday, my son takes his UCAS exams and he said, Mum, Dad, can we go out to Rick Stein's for a meal on Thursday night to celebrate me having done the exam? I said, yep, okay. And I'm quite happy that he felt comfortable to say that. And I'm happy that we're going to go out as a family and have a meal in Rick Stein's. So I'm happy about the future. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But anger is all about the here and now. I'm calm, I'm relaxed, I'm content. Something occurs in the present and that disturbs my calm and relaxed state. When it first occurs, I don't know whether it's a positive or a negative thing. It's just a thing. It's an input, which could be an opportunity, it could be a threat. So I get a boost of adrenaline. That is the first steps of moving towards anger. It's giving me energy to either fight, flight, or whatever I need to do to solve the problem. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's all about now. The event is in the here and now. I need to look for the solution in the here and now. Sadness is all about the past. Sadness is about loss. I can't lose things in the future. I can't lose things really in the immediate present. I lose things in the present when I learn of the loss. But the loss has already happened. You following the logic?
Yeah, just for anger, can we not still be angry about something which happened in the past?
We can be, but if we are, what does that suggest?
Helplessness.
No?
That we're not happy.
Yeah, we're not happy, but it also suggests that in the past, when we were angry, we did
It
not
wasn't
solve the
authentic.
problem.
Oh yeah, right, of course. Yeah.
Okay. So if you don't solve a problem, it slips into the past and you can still be angry about it. But how does that help?
Yeah.
What are you going to do about it now to solve the problem?
John?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I've got a question on that.
That's okay.
With people with sort of childhood trauma, where they don't actually discover that they're traumatized until years and years and years and years later in adulthood.
Yeah.
And then they go through the anger belatedly.
Yes.
Where does that fit into all of this? And what can they do about it, especially if, say, the perpetrators are no longer here?
Oh, it's a very good question, Julia. Well, first of all, that's not a case for coaching.
Okay.
It's a case for therapy because it involves regression. But yes, when we have trauma and we suddenly are faced with it in the here and now and begin to understand why it is for so many years, these situations have led to me being this. And I understand, wow, I'm still angry with so-and-so about so-and-so. Now is the time to resolve it, even if they're dead. I killed my aunt when I was 45 because I found out something that she did when I was 4 that led me to feel very angry, and I'd been angry about it for years. And when I suddenly discovered what it was I'd been so angry about, I built a big pile of pillows. I visualized my aunt being on the pillows and I beat the crap out of it. And I yelled and I yelled and I yelled and I beat the pillows. And when I was exhausted, my therapist said, "Have you finished?" And the little me said, "No." And she said, "What do you need to finish?" and I said, I need this object that she threw away, actually, back. I need it back. And she said, well, you won't be able to get that back. Would it be okay to get one that's just like it? And I said, yes. So I agreed with myself in the therapy room that I would find the object that I was looking for. And I went out and found it. It took me about 2 years, actually. But during that 2 years, I was no longer full of rage, because all that rage that I was carrying within me,
Yeah.
I've been able to discharge. When we have unexpressed emotions, we hold them in our body, in our tissue. So anger, I was always having headaches and back pains, upper shoulders, my neck, always tight, like, and I realized that was because I was carrying all this charge that I hadn't been able to discharge. So discharging is a way to do it. It's a therapy process, a therapeutic process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Indeed.
So sadness is about the past, it's about loss, but it involves the whole process. You can see these loops here. See that anger goes into anger, solves the problem, but back to happy. Sadness goes through anger into sadness, working on the sadness, which can take quite a long time sometimes, depending on the degree of grief, and then back to happy. And similarly, fear, arousal into anger, into fear, solving the problem, coming back and being happy. And how do I solve it? Well, that's what these bits around the edge of the model is. I will, by the way, make this into a PDF and send it to you, Julia, so that you can send it out to people.
Good. I was actually trying to get my camera on to take a picture of it, so thank you.
I'll send this to you, but will you email me so that I can remember what the email address is to send it to?
Yes, I will. And
so
thank you.
when I'm angry, I need to solve the problem. So what do I need? I need to look for a win-win. I need to be heard. That doesn't mean I need you to hear my voice. It means I need you to hear what I'm saying. I need to negotiate assertively. I need to retain the relationship. I don't want to destroy the relationship to solve the problem, because that hasn't solved the problem. I need to find a way of solving it together with you. And I need to stay, I'm okay, you're okay, and seek cooperation.
Can I ask you a question from Cynthia, John?
Yes.
She says, I want to ask about the person that keeps to themselves and doesn't express their anger, but at the same time, after a while, does not remember what made them angry in the first place.
So what is the question? I hear the formulation, but I don't hear what bit is what it about.
So if they don't actually realize what made them angry in the first place, so it's then hard to, later on discharge it, like you were saying with your previous example.
Okay, so that's a defense mechanism, isn't it? If I've got a splinter in my hand, my body knows that if it stays in there, it's going to get infected. It starts to get infected and it's painful, but I don't do anything about it. Now, the body will say, okay, we've got to contain that infection. So the body will build something around that infected object to try and hold the infection in one place. Sometimes it causes a lesion. It just seals it in. And for a while, you don't notice that it's there until you touch it. When you touch it, it hurts. So the only way of solving it in the end is to find where is the lesion, what is causing the lesion, to open it and get the infected matter out. So that is a defense mechanism. If I've got something painful and I forget it, I don't think about it, put it away, put it in a little box. But unfortunately, the little box is still in me. So every time something touches the little box, it will cause some form of reaction. So finding the solution.
You do need to dig back, right? You do need to dig back and find out what it is that makes you angry.
That is not coaching.
No, indeed.
Coaching is in the here and now. So digging back, as soon as it's digging back, it's therapy.
She says, thank you, Tom.
Okay, you're very welcome. So when I'm sad, I need to be held. I need to be comforted and cared for. I need to have my grief accounted for. I need for people to hear my grief and allow me to grieve, not tell me, oh, it'll all be okay. Yes, it will be okay, but it's not going to help me right now. I need to be able to sob, to cry, to be comforted, to be held, to allow myself to work through the process until I can let go and move on. Because what we've got to do when we're grieving is we've got to let go and move on. That makes sense?
Yeah. Yes.
With fear, I have to manage the risks. Fear is always about threat. So a threat can only ever be in the future. I can't threaten you in the past. I may have threatened you in the past, but it's not going to harm you anymore. So it's to do with threat, and I need to manage the risks, which means I need to find protection. Sometimes I find that within myself. I use my own resources to protect myself. Sometimes I find allies to protect me. I love the word covering, from the old John Wayne movies where he would shout, cover me, when the Indians were after him. So I need that kind of protection, that covering. And that's what the healthy reaction to fear is. Now, when we're not being healthy, we don't seek the right solution. I don't have time to take you through each of the other states in this 1 hour. That's a big ask. I could do it in a day. But that's the basic model. If you want to know more about the model, it's all written up in my book, Foreplay, Fair Play, and Foul Play. Foreplay, fair play, foul play. Everything I've said here is in there, plus a lot more. So let's press on. So stuck places. When we're in a stuck place in coaching, the client is usually suppressing or overlooking an emotion. It's more often than not, something is going on emotionally, and the client is seeking to avoid facing the issue. When they allow themselves to experience the emotion, know what's telling them, they can find a way to move forward. So the coach needs to be aware of the block and develop interventions to facilitate movement. So the coach asks questions and the client does not answer it. For example, I don't know. What are you feeling? I don't know. Or they answer a different question. I ask a question and they answer a different question altogether. Politicians are great at that, aren't they? It's called redefining.
Yes.
They remain silent. They simply don't say anything. They give an answer with incongruence. In other words, what they say doesn't match how they look or their tone of voice. The emotional clues don't fit together. Or you recognize as a coach, we've been here 5 times in the last week. What's this all about? So interventions, use yourself as a tool. You're a wonderful tool and you are an emotional being. Ask yourself, what am I feeling? Am I happy, sad, scared, or angry? Ask the client what emotions they're experiencing. If they avoid answering, ask them to experience their body. Help them to focus on where the emotion is located in their body. There are places where we feel certain emotions. With different personalities, you'll need different strategies. So those who seem logical, they like questions such as, that was an interesting answer. How does it answer my question? Those who are more emotional prefer interventions such as, please share your emotions with me. I'm here for you. Those who are action-oriented respond to activities such as, show me how you will achieve this, or tell me what you will do when you're back at work. Those who are playful and resistant to authority prefer teasing such as, why don't you answer my questions? Don't you like me? And you say that without sarcasm. Those who are quiet or silent, withdrawn, they like to visualize and reflect. So say, take your time and visualize how you will look when the problem is solved. So options, it's good to have options, and it's good to know your client and to appreciate their different styles. It sharpens our capacity to have options for managing the client stuck places. Remember, it's the client who is stuck, it's not you. Okay, so when people come to me for supervision and they say, I'm stuck, I say, really? Are you telling me that your client is stuck? Knowing your emotional response can guide you about your needs and assist in not getting into the transference. I haven't got time to explain transference. If you don't know what it is, look it up on Google, transference, okay? It can also point to how to connect with your client at the emotional level. So this is a call to action. So I invite you to take some time to gain awareness of which type of client you often feel in a stuck place with and how you feel emotionally when you experience this. Then look at the emotion and ask yourself, what do I need to help me to stay focused and select useful options in these situations? So anger, what do I need to negotiate change? Sadness, where is the loss? Fear, what is the perceived threat? So what will you do differently, if anything, as a result of what we've been saying today? By when will you implement the change? Measure the change? And what will you do if you find sustaining change difficult? What action will you take then? And finally, they're the books I've been talking about. So the first book, Fair Play, Foreplay, Fair Play, and Foul Play, is all about the emotional assertiveness model. And if you listen to it, it's about foreplay, how we start to enter relationships, fair play, how we maintain healthy relationships, and foul play, how we screw up our relationships. And what's love got to do with it is all about love. It's explaining why love is not an emotion and why love is all of our emotions. So these are the books, and you'll find them on www.emotionalassertiveness.com, and on the home page it says buy my books. If you click there, it will take you to the Great British Bookstore, and there's a link for you to click on and buy them. So I'm going to close the slideshow. If we have 2 or 3 minutes,
Wow.
which we have about 2.
Indeed. Well, first of all, thank you, because this has been very thorough. So much information. My wrist is killing me from having been writing at high speed. We do have time for 1 or maybe 2 questions. Anybody have a burning issue they want to directly ask John now that we have the chance to have him with us?
Okay.
Yes, Vesna.
Yes, thank you. So thank you very much. Nice presentation. And but if we are as a coach empathetic and show compassion toward the clients who is very sad and desperate, how can we avoid being drawn into the whole of this sadness by the client?
It's important to know who's sad, you or the coachee. So you have to keep the boundaries intact, so that they are responsible for what they feel and getting a solution. You're only responsible for being with them and going on the journey with them. So don't allow yourself to become sad because of someone else's sadness. You can empathize with them, but you don't take it on as your load.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
There's a lot in the book about boundaries, by the way.
Anyone else want to ask John a question? I see no movement, no hands. Thank you, John, very much. You've perfectly timed it. It is exactly past. I, and of course, invite everybody to buy the book. I know I've written both of them down, and thank you, because that was a lot of information, but delivered in a way where we could all follow, and you've certainly given me an awful lot of food for thought. So thank you very much. Well done to all of you for having made time for that today. Don't forget to fill in your CPD pads. And John, you're receiving lots of thank yous, etc. And I will make sure that, that you get those as well. So wishing you all a wonderful rest of an evening. On behalf of IAPC&M, thank you very much, John. Bye.
Thank you. You're very welcome.
Thank
Bye.
you.